On October 11th, 1923, twin brothers Ray and Roy D'Atremont and their younger brother Hugh hiked into the Siskiyou Mountains. They'd spent the last few days hiding out in an abandoned cabin, organizing supplies, and preparing a heist that would come to be known as the last great American train robbery. Their plan was to rob a Southern Pacific Railroad train heading from Portland to San Francisco, just as it passed through Tunnel 13 in Southern Oregon. That's where the train stopped to check its brakes as it steamed south. That's where the D'Atremont brothers planned their ambush. At the tunnel's exit point, Ray D'Atremont hid their supplies, a box of dynamite, and a plunger-style detonator. While he did that, Hugh and Roy took a shotgun and 2 Colt .45 pistols and hiked over the hill to where the train would stop before entering the tunnel. At about 12:30, the train arrived, and Roy and Hugh climbed on board and forced Southern Pacific engineer Sidney Bates to pull the train forward through the 3,000-foot-long tunnel to the other side, where their brother was waiting. Their target was the locked and guarded mail car, where cash and other valuables were kept. The brothers had a tip that there was a shipment of gold on this train. In later newspaper coverage, this train would come to be known as the Gold Special. But when they told the armed postal clerk, Elvin Doherty, to open the door, he barricaded himself inside. They couldn't shoot the door open, so the D'Atremont brothers went and got their dynamite. I like to imagine that the brothers gave Doherty one last chance to open the door, that there was one final moment where things could have turned out differently. But whatever was or wasn't said, Roy eventually had enough. He packed the dynamite around the locked door, took the detonator, and ran for cover. From the Gert Boyle Studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. Today, we're bringing you the story of Oregon's most infamous railroad heist and how the desperate men who tried to pull it off inadvertently helped launch a whole new field of criminology. The heist was the subject of an OPB documentary made by Oregon Experience writer and producer Cami Horton called Murder on the Southern Pacific. Before the D'Atremonts were plotting what some would call the crime of the century, they spent their youth mostly following their father Paul around as he tried to find work.
The family moved a lot.
Scott Mangold is the author of Tragedy at Southern Oregon Tunnel 13.
Paul was always trying to find an opportunity that was better than the last.
Eventually, Paul left the family in New Mexico, and 16-year-old twins Ray and Roy hopped a freight train to the Pacific Northwest, hoping to find some way to support their mom and younger brother. Roy got a job at the Oregon State Hospital. Ray worked in the Vancouver shipyards, which led to him joining the Industrial Workers of the World, or Wobblies, an influential, often confrontational labor union. And back then, being a card-carrying wobbly meant getting harassed by the police. Ray was eventually arrested, tried to escape from jail, and was sentenced to a year in prison.
He grew more and more bitter, more determined to find ways to do whatever it took to make money and to share it with his family.
After Ray was released, he and Roy started working in logging camps, but the jobs didn't pay enough or last long enough for them to send much money home. In June 1923, their 19-year-old brother Hugh joined them at a camp near Silverton, and they began talking about robbing a train.
They claimed they felt betrayed by the system.
Finn J.D. John is an author and professor at Oregon State University.
And decided, well, why not? We'll rob a train and then we'll be on Easy Street. So they did.
Ray seems to have been the mastermind. He scouted tracks up and down the West Coast and eventually found a place deep in the woods, meaning no one would be around, where trains had to stop to test their brakes, meaning someone with a gun could hop on board. Not only that, but with most of the trains stopped inside the tunnel, passengers would be in the dark and wouldn't be able to see what was going on at the front of the train. They wouldn't know they were being robbed until the dynamite blew. Here's Scott Mangold again.
People had realized that with a little bit of planning, you could carry off a robbery pretty easily.
It was a plan straight out of a comic book. In fact, it very closely resembled the plot of a popular movie, The Great Train Robbery, in which bandits hold up a train at gunpoint, blow the door off the mail car, and make off with the loot. It was just like something Butch Cassidy would have done a generation earlier, or Jesse James, and those guys were heroes. Historian Jeff Lalande.
The Robin Hood idea of people who flaunt the law, who are maybe from the lower rungs of society, and do something on a grand scale that attracts the attention and even the approval of many people.
Unfortunately, the plan didn't work.
They basically used every stick of dynamite they had, destroyed the car, and incinerated the mail clerk.
Larry Mullally is a railroad historian.
So there was no mail, there was just ruin.
No mail, and now that they had killed someone, there was no going back.
It was a whole new crime now. So they decided between themselves that they would take no prisoners.
The D'Autremonts shot brakeman Coyle Johnson when he ran forward to see what happened. Then they killed fireman Marvin Sang and Sidney Bates, the engineer, because they'd seen their faces. Including Elvin Doherty, the mail clerk, they killed 4 people. To top it all off, there wasn't any gold on board. Even if there had been, they'd blown it all up.
Well, robbing a train was just a terrible idea.
It was an absolute failure.
The brothers fled into the woods, empty-handed, and the manhunt was on.
There were posses everywhere, airplanes flying overhead looking for the D'Autremonts. Every law officer anywhere in the Pacific Northwest was being contacted by people who felt they had something to offer the manhunt.
Luckily for them, the brothers planned their escape a little better than they had planned their robbery. Everyone who had seen their faces was dead. They dragged bags of creosote behind them to disguise their scent from the bloodhounds. The thick tree cover hid them from the airplanes searching a grid pattern. And almost immediately, the trail went cold. Police questioned and locked up dozens of people, but searchers weren't sure who they were looking for or where they went. And with every hour that passed, the chances of catching them diminished. But the brothers left behind a couple of clues. They dropped a pistol as they fled into the woods and tossed a piece of luggage. Investigators also found a pair of overalls. A week later, that evidence was sent to Berkeley, California, to a scientist named Edward O. Heinrich.
All of American forensics go back to him.
Forensic criminologist Ed Espinosa.
Nobody was systematically collecting the evidence, analyzing the evidence, and interpreting the evidence, which really is what forensic science does today, and he was the first one to do that.
Heinrich was called an American Sherlock Holmes, also the Thomas Edison of crime detection. And as soon as the evidence arrived, it was CSI Southern Oregon.
From microscopic examination, chemical analysis, and a study of this garment, I am of the opinion that the wearer was a lumberjack employed in a fir or spruce logging camp.
The overalls had wood shavings embedded in the fabric, so Heinrich deduced that the robber worked cutting trees. Not only that, but the shavings were mostly on the right side of the pants, the way a lefty would stand to swing his axe. So Heinrich could tell that this robber was left-handed. There were also evenly cut fingernail clippings in one of the pockets. And from that, he decided that when wearing city clothes, this person was fastidious and clean-cut. From nothing but the coveralls, he was able to put together a remarkably detailed portrait of the robber.
A white man, not over 165 pounds, probably less, aged between 21 and 25. Neat in appearance, has medium light brown hair, complexion fair, with small hands and feet.
The most significant piece of evidence, however, was found stuffed in a tiny pocket where no one else had looked.
The real smoking gun that identified the boys was these coveralls. Deep in a pencil pocket, there had been crammed a postal receipt from Roy D'Autremont sending money back home to his family in New Mexico.
Hugh D'Autremont had received $50 in the mail from his brother Roy, a left-handed lumberjack. Suddenly, police had only one question.
The investigation wasn't about who should we be looking for, it was where do we find the D'Autremonts.
After the break, a Southern Oregon manhunt goes worldwide. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll brighten your Monday morning a little bit with something new and enthralling to listen to each week. You can also follow OPB on Instagram at OPBphoto, or follow me directly at Jen Chavez OPB. That's Jen with 2 N's. And I'll keep you posted on everything Team Evergreen is up to. And remember, this episode about Oregon's most infamous railroad heist and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. That's right, you are the public in public media. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now, back to the show. When the D'Autremont brothers fled into the Siskiyou Mountains after holding up Southern Pacific Train 13, they all but vanished. Search dogs couldn't follow their scent. Airplanes couldn't find them. Posses formed and disbanded without finding so much as a footprint. But when police sent the physical evidence from the crime scene to scientist Edward O. Heinrich, he basically came back to them with the names of the killers. The work became famous and led to the establishment of the first crime lab in the country in Los Angeles a few months later.
The D'Autremont case was able to show law enforcement how useful scientific evaluation of the evidence could help them.
What science couldn't tell police, however, was where the brothers were hiding out.
2.5 million posters distributed around the world, $500,000 spent on the investigation, which was big money then. Everybody wanted these people captured and hung at any expense.
The twins, Ray and Roy, fled to Detroit, Michigan, and tried to change their appearance, bleaching their hair and even having some teeth pulled. Hugh joined the Army under the name James Price and was sent to the Philippines. They were on the run for 4 years, until Hugh's commanding officer saw one of the wanted posters.
His commanding officer recognized, that's Private Price, contacted the authorities and said, I think one of the guys in my unit is Hugh D'Autremont.
This trial was one of the biggest things that Jacksonville had ever seen. It brought newsreel cameras and reporters from all over the place.
People were fighting to get into the court so that they could grab a seat and watch this whole thing.
The trial got underway, and it was reportedly going well for Hugh. The jury was on his side until one of the jurors got sick, died, and the judge declared a mistrial.
By the time the judge had declared a mistrial, it was late in May, the weather was hot, the courtroom was hot. People were very impatient.
Before Hugh could be tried again, Ray and Roy were recognized and arrested in Steubenville, Ohio. They signed a confession to avoid the death penalty. They were all sentenced to life in prison.
This is a classic no winners kind of story. Nobody went into this and came out improved in any way at all.
And it's really the family who were the victims. Those who were killed, they were gone, but the family, for years, grieved and suffered from their losses.
There's stories in town of the widow of the engineer who was doing laundry for people because she had no income, they had children.
Hugh served 31 years in prison. He learned to work as a printer for the prison newspaper and was finally paroled and released in 1958. He died of stomach cancer just a few months later. Roy became increasingly violent in prison. He was eventually transferred to a mental hospital, then a nursing home. He died in 1983. Then there was Ray.
Ray became a scholar. He did a lot of reading. He learned languages, other subjects, taught them to inmates, and became arguably a contributory citizen.
In 1972, Ray D'Autremont met with Oregon Governor Tom McCall, who commuted his sentence.
You're an ideal example that reformation can work. It was easy, and I was proud and happy to have the opportunity to do it.
After his release, Ray worked as a part-time janitor at the University of Oregon. He wrote essays and spent his time painting. And he was alive to see the story of the train robbery grow into a kind of legend.
Way out west in Oregon in 1923, the D'Autremont brothers wrecked the train as brutal as could be.
This is Crime of the D'Autremont Brothers by the Johnson Brothers, recorded in 1928. It tells the story from robbery to manhunt to sentencing.
Now they are in prison for the lives they've led, without any hope of pardon until they are dead.
Over the years, you can see this crime pop back up in popular culture every few decades. The 1949 gangster movie White Heat opens with a very similar robbery and 4 murders, just as a train exits a long tunnel.
Get away from North Control! What's this, a hold-up? No.
In 1969, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid has a scene where the outlaws use too much dynamite and blow up the train they're trying to rob.
Well, that ought to do it. Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch?
Then, just last year in 2024, Dire Straits guitarist Mark Knopfler released a song called Tunnel 13 about the D'Autremont brothers.
3 bandits, hearts filled with resentment and hate, killed mill clerk Elvin Doherty, engineers.
But despite its place in popular culture, there are a lot of problems with calling this the last great American train robbery. In fact, almost every word in that description is inaccurate. They didn't take anything, so it wasn't a robbery. And a year later, in Illinois, bandits made off with several $1 million in cash from a train. So it wasn't the last American anything. But maybe we can call it great. Not in the sense that it was good. There are very few quadruple murders that are good. But maybe it was great in that it was audacious and ambitious. It was a crime so bold that solving it helped legitimize the field of forensic science. It was so daring that it still has a hold on our imagination. And it speaks to the profound desperation of being down and out in America. With no prior experience, no training or qualifications besides ongoing financial distress, these three brothers tried to pull off a job that would set them up for life. It was a fantasy, it turns out. But when you're desperate, that's something. You can watch Oregon Experience's 2015 documentary about the D'Outremont brothers and their train robbery that wasn't, called Murder on the Southern Pacific, at opb.org. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Peter Frick-Wright produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. The OPB podcast team also includes Mia Estrada, Julie Sabatier, and Sage Van Wing. Oregon Experience writer and producer Cami Horton, along with videographers Greg Bond and Tom Schreider, did the interviews you heard. Our theme music and scoring comes from Audio Network. And hey, if you have a question for us, please reach out. Just send us an email at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.